What makes you the most dedicated or biggest fan of something? Is it the memorabilia and the moments that you can say you attended? Perhaps it's the level of emotion you show after a win or loss. In reality, while they may qualify you as a fan, to be the person that others see as the biggest fan, you have to have just one thing: extreme passion. Our guest today took his passion to a level that had never been seen before. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Win, a show where we interview champions and trailblazers and ask questions to uncover and discover their championship traits for succeeding in sports, work, and life. Our guest today, Cameron Hughes, is a professional crowd igniter and a public speaker. In case you haven't heard of Cameron, when we say professional, we mean it. He has inspired crowds at the US Open, the NBA, the NHL, on TV, radio programs, corporate events, and the Olympics. In addition to his work in person, Cameron's also the author of King of Cheer, stories of showing up, getting up, and never giving up from the world's most electrifying crowd igniter. Cameron's purpose in life is simple and inspiring. It's to energize others to get up and live every experience to its fullest. Something we believe in on this show, Cameron, 100%. Cameron, pleasure to have you with us today. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it. Let's spread some cheer, right?
Welcome, Cameron. Welcome. Cameron, I've been fortunate to see you perform here in Vegas. Even had a few cocktails with you and your crew afterwards. But, you know, it's a long road from these big venues, Olympics, tennis, Bell Center, Madison Square Garden and such. I mean, you cut your teeth at these small venues and minor league parks and so on. Talk about your focus, never giving up, the pressure, and how you got here.
Yeah, you know, it's funny, you know, you're on the plane and you're on that third hop and you're like, oh my God, is this worth it? Right? You know, you're going from this small town and you get up at 6 a.m. You're at this hotel in the middle of nowhere. And then you get the call to maybe to come to the big game, and you realize that it was never really about the big game. It's truly been about that journey, right? Even though it's like amazing to be in an arena with 18,000 or 50,000 people, my whole thing has always been, it's about the crowd. It's about being that spark. It's about in that moment, how can we create, you know, some more smiles, some more laughter. And, you know, we all know that we don't know anyone's story, why they're at the game, what they're going through, what their life is about. So for those 2 hours, let's give them everything we've got just to make them come together and bring the cheer, really.
I love that answer. And I want to dive even deeper because as we were talking about before the show, you know, I was fortunate enough to work at Madison Square Garden for several years, and it's a special place. I've been to a lot of arenas. I'm not from New York. I never claimed the Rangers and the Knicks as my first teams, although I did fall in love with them when I worked there. But that atmosphere is something special. Now, what I want to dive into, Cameron, is that, you know, we know who you are, we know what you do, but I want to dive into that spark moment when you realized, hey, I don't want to just do this. Like, I want this to be my life, right? I want there to be a book. I want people to know me. I want there to be an amazing website, and I want this to be my mission, right? And when I think about our audience, you know, the coaches and the kids that are listening, the young people that have that dream, but maybe don't know how to get to it. It might not even be sports people listening to this episode, to be honest with you. Just somebody who has that, I have a passion for something and I want to make this my life. What was that moment for you, and how did you pursue it? And then walk me through that journey, because you didn't just start at Madison Square Garden. It didn't just start like that. You know what I mean? So
I kind of had a dream in the back of my mind of, like, you know, in the background where I could go. But when, you know, you're a kid, I wasn't the best at any sports and didn't make the high school team. And so I went and cheered on my buddies who were on the team. And I found this, like, oh, I was pretty good at this. And I was, the team enjoyed it. So I started to get other students involved, and then I became Mr. Spirit. And then I, you know, went on to be a student leader. And then I went on to university, where I wore a watermelon on my head at football games to get the crowd going. So all those moments, like building that foundation, led to me being at a hockey game in Ottawa one night where I had enough. I was upset the crowd wasn't into it. I got up, 8 minutes to go in the game, and that moment completely changed my life. And I just finally said, this is who I am. I stopped looking to the left, to the right for permission, and it all came from here. I genuinely wanted people to have more fun.
Yeah, I have to pull the thread on that. Sorry, that is such a big deal, because, like I said, it's a spark. I refer to it as a spark. Something clicked in you that said, this is me. Not enough people do that, and they're terrified of it. And I love that your spark, your situation, not only is it like, oh, this is me, there's 20,000 people around at the moment, right? It's like you're out there, right? You're naked now in front of these people, not literally, right? I mean, you do take your clothes off a lot, but you know what I mean, right? So the courage, the bravery. I mean, can you walk me through that specific moment?
Well, I think one thing I need to go back to too, though, is like it's a series of events that led to that, right?
Right.
I think a lot
Fair.
of people think, oh, it just needs to happen. It's like, no, you've got to keep doing all these things. And at the
Right.
time, you don't know it. We're all impatient. We all want it to happen. Like, come on, why isn't it not, grooving the way we want it to?
It's a great
And
point,
I
man.
tell a lot of students, I used to speak to schools full time almost. It's like build your foundation. The stronger your foundation, the more chance you have for success, to be set up for success. For me, I'd already done a lot of stuff with crowds, but I'd never been that naked, so to speak, in front of
Right.
10,000 people. I had the confidence in the sense of like, I wasn't afraid of a crowd, but like to get up in front of 10,000 people it's still scary as heck, right?
Can say
I
that,
had
yeah.
lost my mother when I was younger to breast cancer, and she was always about like leading with my heart, and that's who I am. I lead with
Right.
my heart. You probably, the joy you get from that is great, but there's also a fear by just being completely vulnerable in yourself. And that night, I took off all the masks, right, and just went for it. And here's what happened. The crowd looked at me like I was crazy at first. And then they realized in that moment, like if you asked the people that were there, they would say, oh, we were like crazy drunk guy. Obviously, I didn't have anything to drink that night.
Right.
And then, excuse me. And then they all looked at me like, oh, wait a minute. You just want to get everyone into the game and have fun. So my whole thing, guys, is when you get up, when you take that chance, when you go for it, the crowd will cheer you on. They'll respond to you. They'll reward you for taking that chance. And my whole story isn't about getting up that first time. It's about what the next whistle, the play stops. Players are like, what the heck's going on up there? JB, can you imagine the NHLers like, what's he doing? And I kept dancing the next whistle blow. I go to the aisle and I start dancing. And that's why I've had a career, because I kept doing it. I was like, I took the adrenaline, the momentum, the fan response, and I kept going. And after the game, they said, we want you to come back. And I'm like, what do you want me to do? They're like, we just want you to dance. And they did. That's all they wanted me to do, to bring joy to people.
And that's the product, by the way. I think we lose that in sports sometimes. And JB, I will jump right over to you, but that's why I started the show the way that I did, Cameron, because a lot of people identify their fandom, I think, through the wrong things. Like you shouldn't be identifying your happiness through a hockey team. And I love hockey, but you have no control over whether or not this team loses. I'm not saying you should be stoic about it. I'm not excited when my team loses, right? But I don't identify through their success, but the community and the being around other people and the fact we're enjoying this together, how fortunate we are to be here together. That's more fun for me, right? As not just a fan, but someone in the game. Sorry, JB, I cut you off. Go ahead and jump in, man.
No, and I just think what he said a couple important things there, Cameron. Like, when I worked in the NHL, I used to remind the players and the staff and everybody else, like, somebody's coming to a game that spent hundreds of dollars to bring their kids to buy an $8 hot dog and a $4, a $10 beer.
Yeah.
And so both on and off the ice, like we have to deliver. And, I've seen you at T-Mobile here, and the crowds are packed, but you're still bringing that 100% energy that just gravitates people to enjoyment. And you're right, at the end of the day, people might not remember the game, but they're going to remember everything else that happened. Totally. And that's part of it. But Cameron, talk about like slugging it out in these, barns and these, single A baseball stadiums and bar mitzvahs and everything else that, events you were cheering at to finally get to this pinnacle of at the Olympics, at MSG, at the Bell Center. Maybe you can walk us through that.
Yeah, I mean,
that perseverance of never giving up.
Yeah, it's funny because my career has been sprinkled with like the NHL and then minor league games, and it's been all over the place. For me, it's been about trying to convince people that I have add value to your experience, right? There's so many different distractions, like you said, at sport events and now teams have all these big entertainment departments and they realize they need to spend money on better DJs and lighting and all the extra things. So my belief meter, if you want to call it that, has been to struggle of like, how can I convince, the XYZ team at any team that I'm going to come in and I'm going to provide something that you really need. Right. And so all these teams you see behind me, like gave me a shot. And I think the big thing in life, and we know, like, if you just need someone to believe in you, to give you that shot. And so how do you get in the door? Right. And for me, I have VHS copies of my demo reel here that I used to send out to people, and I wouldn't hear from anyone. And I was like, wait a minute, maybe I should just show up. So I started just to show up at these venues in the early days. I'd make my own t-shirts, and the crowd would be like, what's he doing? And by the end of it, sometimes the executives would come up to me and say, hey, we want to bring you back. Other times you'd never hear from them. But there was one game where I went to where I had been to a Lakers game, a Kings game, and a Ducks game 3 nights in a row in the early days. And at the end of the 3 nights, this guy comes up to me and he taps me on the shoulder. I'll never forget it. That tap, that moment where you're like, hey kid, and he says, I work for Washington Sports and Entertainment, and I've seen you the last 3 nights, and we want to hire you. And I was like, what? I have to show up in LA and Anaheim to get a gig in Washington. And it made me realize, like, show up. You just never know. And we're always like thinking it's got to be a perfect scenario of like, it's got to be this amount of money, or it's got to be this. Like, the US Open paid me $1 the first time I performed there, because I just wanted them. I just did the Olympics. I'm like, but I needed to get in the door. So to answer the question, it's like, how do you get in the door? How do you prove your value? It's like, whether it's a minor league team or an NHL team, it's the same mindset. I find why do we need you? Like, we got enough stuff going on, right?
There's a few things I got to tap on that. And it's brilliant what you just said. So number one is, you said you just need someone to give you the chance. I've heard a lot of people say that, and it's 100% true. Like, nobody does it alone. Nobody succeeds alone. But I know there's a lot of young people out there, not even just young people, that go, well, no one's giving me the chance. No one's finding me. And that's the key. They're not going to find you. In hockey, we say it, the puck's not going to come to you. You got to go get the puck.
Yeah.
All right. And create opportunities for yourself. And I want to focus on that, because you said it. I went and started doing this for free. I went and started looking for opportunities, and then people found me through that. That is the damn key. And I want people to understand that.
I need to add something to that real quick, because, and I'm not tapping myself on the shoulder here and on the back. It's like, I just done the Olympics. I wanted to do something different. I started to realize that there was all these other events. I had to completely leave my ego at the door when the US Open said no to me.
Right.
But I knew, guys, deep down inside, somewhere in here in my belief meter, that the US Open would work. Right. So back to your question of like, why chasing the puck? It's like, well, you got to let go of your ego, because it's not always going to be a perfect scenario. Right.
Yeah, well, and there's 2 parts to that. Right.
Yeah.
So one is that you had enough courage and belief. That's a big part of this too. We don't talk about enough. Like, you have to believe in what you're doing 100%. You're going to get the 100 no's before you get a yes. And I love that you're saying it too. Like, I just did the Olympics. I love that. Like, that doesn't qualify me. Your belief was still so strong that, the ego's not there. I love that you're bringing up ego. We're going to talk about that, because, wars are fought over ego, right? It's amazing when you remove ego from a situation, what can be accomplished. The other thing too, and you reminded me of this, and I want our audience to know this, totally similar situation. I coached college hockey for several years, very successfully. And I wanted to go pro. No one would hire me. Nobody would hire me. You know what I did, man? I coached pro for free for a year, 1 season. And I got a job immediately after that. But someone had given me that advice. Like, you have to go volunteer. You have to show them that you mean it. And that's how I broke in. I remember thinking, Cameron, to your point, a little bit of ego. I remember thinking, like, man, I just have all these wins. How come no one's hiring me? Totally the wrong attitude, right? It wasn't for them to find me. It was for me to go to them. Right. And I want young people to understand, especially the athletes, coaches. I just gave a coaching example. Athletes, I don't care how talented you are. It's never enough. It's never enough. There are very few people on the planet that are so talented that their path is given to them. All right. And most of them, and JB can attest this, most of them still take these chances and still go out of their way to find the opportunities. Okay. Herb Brooks said it. You don't have enough talent to win on talent alone. It's so true. Talent is a big piece, but just a piece of the equation here. Cameron, you have a massive talent for what you do, but I love that you're adding to it. It wasn't just the talent, right? No, you do. You do. Like, man, you paved the way, not just for you. There's other people that do this, not quite as good as you. All right. But my point is, you dove in. I can't stress that message enough to people listening. You have to go for it. You have to believe. You have to be okay getting some no's, a lot of no's, because you just need the one yes. It's the same thing in business. You always talk about minimum viable product. The first thing you put out, it's not perfect. If you wait for the perfect product, you will never have a business.
Yeah.
Ever. Go ahead,
yeah,
man. Sorry.
I mean,
I'm monologuing myself.
No, I know, but like people, I've a lot of friends and even some women I've dated over the years have said they admire like my resilience because it's like how many no's it's taken to, and sometimes I don't talk enough about that. Like when I've been on stages, it's like the amount of no's it took to get to these many yeses is like shocking. I
Right.
lived in Hollywood and played the Hollywood game for years, and you've got it. You've got it. We're hiring you. You're going to be the host of this new show. It's going to change your life. And the next day, oh, we went another direction. And it's like, you have to have this belief meter of, you know, yourself, of what you're contributing, of what value you're adding. And it's hard. It's hard, but you keep getting up. And my whole thing is you keep getting up, you keep getting up. And the more I do games, the more I have moments, the more I hear from fans and people that I've done work with that value what I do, that appreciate it. And it starts to come into your, you know, your treasure chest of beliefs that allows you to keep going, you know.
Right.
And that's a muscle that's hard at times to keep working. But I'm telling you what, like when you do, I mean, next thing you know, you're at like the NBA finals and you're like, because you didn't quit. And it's hard, man. Like
Right.
it's hard.
Cameron, you know, first off, you know, your book King of Cheer, Lee and I are both authors, and I started reading your book and I couldn't put it down. It was
Oh,
hilarious.
thanks.
It's true. It was
Was it the
hilarious.
pictures?
Yeah, how'd you know?
I just said, Cameron, he didn't say that about my book, but he said, no, I'm just kidding.
No, but there's a couple things in there, a couple things you also said. You know, when you talk about this resilience and never giving up and leaving ego at the door, you know, everybody wants to be elite, but you know, the difference between average and elite is sustainable performance. And that's what you did. You continued to sustain that performance over and over. And that's how we can talk about, you know, Sidney Crosby, you know, Ovechkin, those type of players, because they've continued to do it year after
Yeah.
year
Brady.
after year, which
Yeah.
which makes you elite. But what I want to talk about is, you know, in your book, you have a statistic that says 75% of your gigs are word of mouth. And I got to tell you, Lee and myself and our business, that's how it is.
Yeah.
You know, and everything pushing internet now, influencers, be famous without even being good at anything. But it's still, I try to continue to tell people, it's still the word of mouth and just doing a good job. Talk us through how important those personal connections are.
You know, it's such a good point that I don't think, you know, Jay, we talk enough about, because, you know, it's like I work the room as hard as I work the crowd, you know, and, you know, you've seen me at those Golden Knights games and before and after, JB. And it's like, I treasure the relationships I have and I make, and I work hard at them, and I'm grateful for them. Most teams and most executives, on any level, probably get a note or a special gift or some t-shirt after they've hired me. When I don't, I'm always like, why didn't I do that? They gave me a chance to come in and do this. So I'm always super grateful. And I follow up with people. I mean, look, my friend who runs the Minnesota Wild, for 8 years, we've been working together, 8 years. Do you think he's at the start of the season thinks, got to get Cameron's dates in? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm constantly like, hey, Paul, remember me? And I'll send a funny video of me wearing a Minnesota Wild jersey, sitting on my couch,
Again,
going,
no
why
ego.
haven't you called? You
no
know?
ego, right? I love that. There's
Yeah,
no ego
I mean,
there for
but
you.
it's hard to lose that ego at times.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah,
like,
sure.
wait a minute, I just killed it at your game. What do you mean you're not having me back?
All right.
Right?
Right. That's fair too. That's fair too.
But the relationships that I've made is like, it's actually like, I mean, you know, it's a third of the book. It's about that relationship, that person who, you know, the guy from Cleveland who ends up in Vegas, who then hires me because he saw me and I did good work and I was easy to work with, and they liked me, and we had the same, you know, connection in terms of how to deliver that experience. And that's important stuff to work on. And there are times that you've got, you know, You got to let go of that ego when you're working the room that hard, I
Yeah,
think.
that's how Jay Glazer got to where he's at. Anybody here who's a football fan knows him. Like, he earned his way to where he's at through trust with athletes. And so many athletes can't trust reporters because they're just trying to scoop a story. And
Yeah.
apparently, like, and again, this is your episode, but I was saying he apparently held so much trust with players, they would tell him stuff and it wouldn't get out. Right. And that relationship building, again, what JB is talking about is so important.
But then that comes in also to the teams executives I work with. There's a trust there as well.
Right.
That they trust me. It's actually a really interesting point. They trust me that if I'm going to come to a Cavs game, and I'm doing one in March, he trusts me that I'm going to show up on time.
Right.
I'm going to deliver the goods. I'm going to invoice properly. I'm going to be grateful. I'm going to be nice to all the staff and the security and everyone. He trusts that. Right. So it's not just show up and deliver. There's a lot of people I've worked with, I've seen in locker rooms who are just difficult. And because their ego has got them in the way, and then they're not going to be brought back, and there's times you got to bite your tongue and you realize it's like, hey, it's their show. It's the NBA. It's their show. You're just this little dude, like throwing t-shirts out. So, hey,
I remember, quick story for you, Kevin. I remember working at Madison Square Garden one night and we had an anthem singer for the Knicks. I think this will make you laugh. And I'm not gonna lie to you, she was a super diva, and I don't mean that in a good way. Like, she wasn't an actual diva, and she kept rehearsing, and we were telling her very nicely, like, look, you're taking too long to sing the anthem. Like, you're holding every possible note. And we had to kind of say nicely to her, like, no one's coming here to see you sing the national anthem.
Yeah.
Right. Except for your family, which we totally get. But like, this is your moment, but it's not just about you. She wasn't getting it, and she sang the anthem. It took forever. Then the fans started to boo but that's a classic example. Like she couldn't comprehend it. Like, it wasn't just about her, right? This wasn't her moment.
Look at you, and that falls down from all sports. The team's bigger than any player and any day of the week, right? I mean, we've all learned that in the last little while with different athletes who have gone. I'm not going to get into those details, but it's like, it's the game's going to go on with or without.
Totally. Yeah.
You. So what's your part in that? What can you do? How can you execute? How can you deliver every time? And then back to the original question, which is keeping your network and working that, and then the friendships. Like, I mean, I've performed in 41 states. I mean, I could probably call anyone in any small town in the US and go to lunch with them.
That's awesome.
I'm not bragging. I'm just saying, because I worked the relationship, because I enjoyed meeting people in like South Carolina and Charleston, and I could call the guy who ran the team there, and you know what I mean?
I do. I'll tell you this too. And then I'll jump back to you, JB, is that when I work with the team, and so one of the things that I do is I help kind of build team bonds in locker rooms. Right. And coaches always look at me when I'm quizzical. I'm like, well, we have to have a history session. I'm like, what do you mean a history session? I said, I run every team I work with through a history of their program, no matter what level it's at. I really mean that. And they go, why? I said, because I want them to understand, Cameron, what you just said. There was a team before them. There will be a team after them. Yeah. They're just part of the team right now. And it's not limited to just the players. It's the fans. It's the people that, do the daily work, the stewards, the clock people that have been there for 50 years, and every time I do that, when you give them that anchor of, wow, this is a whole community of a timeless community, changes the complete aspect of what they're doing. Right. And, even with what you do, it's so much part of the experience. And I think from a business standpoint, a lot of times people forget that, sports are the entertainment business, right? Like all of it. Right. And that you're bringing joy to people. You can't put an ROI on that. Like, but every executive in pro, minor league, college sports knows that if those fans have to leave feeling good or somewhat like, I want to go back.
Yeah.
Right. And go ahead.
There used to be executives who would say, oh, well, we can't hire Cameron because he's not selling tickets. I'm like, well, you got this whole thing backwards.
Right.
You're going to keep people coming back if you create more people like me and whatever it is, not just me, those great experiences, Right. And back to what you said earlier about, that team is when my mom was, unfortunately was very sick and I didn't make the high school basketball team. She said, well, maybe there's other ways you can contribute to the team. And I was like 16 years old and I'm like, my mom's dying of cancer. I'm like, what do you mean, Mom? And eventually I realized that you don't have to be wearing that jersey. You don't have to have the VIP parking spot to contribute to the team. Right. Everyone, like you said, in that arena on that night is contributing to the success of the team, from the popcorn vendor to the parking lot person to the DJ. Right.
Yeah.
And when I learned that, and I learned that, like, as I've kept learning that and kept that sort of mindset, it's pretty awesome. Because you leave there, high-fiving the usher, and the popcorn guy yells at you.
Right.
I go to a Golden Knights game and the beer guy's like, "Hey man, can I buy some of your friends here a beer?" Because you've got this thing where you realize, like, we're all in this together. And when you do, it's like,
I'm
No
gonna
one,
go ahead, JB. Apologies.
I was going to say, I worked in the NHL. No one remembered the score, but they remembered, was their beer cold? Was their hot dog hot?
Yeah.
And when they were trying to buy swag, did they get flack doing it?
Yeah.
And when you make all of that simple, then it's a great experience.
It's a great way to transition what I was just about to say. Like one of my favorite examples of this in business, and this totally applies to this show, is whether you like them or not, it's Chick-fil-A. And I'll tell you why. This has nothing to do with the ownership of Chick-fil-A, but it's everything to do with your experience at Chick-fil-A. I remember reading an article, JB, about how they trained their employees to say please and thank you and all these other niceties, if you will, to their customers, and it exploded their business because the experience of going there. Now you have to deliver on the food too. Don't get me wrong, but the experience of going there was so enjoyable for people. They wanted to go back. No one wants to go back to the Wendy's, a place which I like, if you're getting really bad service. You don't want to go back there. Kim, this is your point. It's not just about the deliverable, right? The deliverable at a hockey game is you hope your team wins, or any sporting event. But the experience is why you go back, because we all know this. It's impossible for your team to win every game unless you're the Miami Dolphins in the 70s. So it's just, it doesn't happen often. So that experience is so important. So just coaches and players, just to kind of bring this back to the purpose of the show, because I could go on the business side for hours. You're part of that. You can't forget that. JB, I love it. You're talking to one of the best players and teams in the world. Don't forget the people that paid to be here tonight.
Yeah.
Coaches, that's part of it. Players, that's part of it. Why would you not want to keep that in the back of your mind?
Yeah.
Right? You above that you're not going to do well if you have an elitist attitude about the people literally paying to pay your salary. Right? It's important, especially in bad weather. Like you see these hurricanes come through, these blizzards, 4,000 people still show up at the building. Play for them that night, right? I think about stuff like that. Go ahead, Jamie.
No, we had a player that was and Cameron appreciated it. He's going to be a Hall of Famer, and he didn't have a good night, and he had a meet and greet afterwards, and he left. And I said, "Hey, where's Joey Smith?" They're like, equipment guys, like, he left. I'm like, he left. I went out to the parking lot and got him. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I didn't have a good game. I said, no one cares. There's 60 people waiting for you.
Yeah,
right.
And guess what? He walked back in the next day, and he was a little edged at me. Next morning, he brought me a Starbucks. He's like, "Hey, thanks for that." Right?
Yeah.
Because it's
that's the other
that
side
part.
of ego. That's the other side.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to continue to go to. And that's why I love Cameron. Everybody's a small part in making this success. Right. And, we had on a sports psychologist, and we talked about, greatness versus goodness. Can you have greatness without goodness? You can, but should you? And the answer is you should.
I like that.
And the answer is you shouldn't. Right. And I think that's why, I give the Golden Knights a lot of credit for just how they pull awesome. Different people in to make greatness.
How can you not like that team? Everybody made fun of them their first year for being so extra. By the end of the year, I was totally on board. I was like, this is awesome. This is cool.
I don't know.
It's a mindset too.
This Kelly McCrimmon might screw it up, but we'll just, zing him a little bit. But go ahead, Cameron.
But it's a mindset. And I've walked into a lot of arenas, and I know you guys have as well. And it doesn't take me long to understand what the culture is and the vibe and the mindset. You know what I mean? Right. The way you're treated from the get-go, and you realize, like, that top down or bottom up, even if you want to look at it that way too, of empowering people to think the right way, that you're all part of the team, and the ones that I want to keep coming back to make you feel like you're part of the team when you come there for that night or that homestand. And I've gone to minor league games in the middle of nowhere, and there's like a fruit tray, and then like there's like the cup of tea that I asked for, that they're like, "Why do you need tea?" I'm like, "My throat," all those little things, and they have them there for me. How do you think that makes me feel?
Totally.
It sounds really small and crazy right now, but it's not. That makes me know that they're looking after their players and their athletes, and maybe they're like you said, bringing them to the meet and greet.
Goodness.
So
Well, it's always the
Goodness
small
before
stuff.
greatness.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
always the small stuff. Like here, you want to know how small it gets? And JB, we've talked about this many times. Just going up to somebody, hey, how you doing today? Just that alone
Yeah.
can go so far with people. And we don't do it enough because, and look, a lot of us are stuck in our own heads and we're in our own mental patterns. But, I try and go out of my way and how are you doing today? Be honest with me. Is there anything I can do for you? Let me buy you a coffee. Let me just let you feel good. Those things go so far. Not only that, but I'd say 85% of the time, the people pay it forward too.
Yeah.
You change the polarity of their day. They change the polarity of somebody else's day. We need more of that. We just need more of that.
Yeah.
And you do it 20,000 people plus at a time.
Well,
That's awesome.
At the last game I did in Vegas, I had come off 10 days of, I deleted all social media and I went away and I came back and I was so present and in the zone. It was scary. People
I
were
believe
like,
you, man. I believe you.
people were like, what planet were you on that game? And I was like, my whole thing is like, when I do a big open, the whole stadium sees it and feels it. But to me, the reason you hire me is for that other connection of when I'm in your section and I'm getting the kid up or the funny woman up or whatever it is, but being present in those few seconds and giving an extra 10 seconds to each person when I can, that's why I get hired, in my opinion. You know what I mean?
I love it.
Because
Exactly.
that's what matters.
That's it, exactly. And Cameron, it goes into my follow-up. You talk about faith being strong in your life, finding balance between work and family. You talked about just being present. Lee and I talk about being present all the time. Be present with people. Talk us through this, why this is important for you personally and professionally.
Being present, I think it's when like you truly have a connection, like you feel this it's hard to explain exactly what it is, but it's like this almost this bond that happens, you know what I mean, in that quick second or that 4-hour plane ride. Right, there's something that happens where you let go and they let go and you're both like you're in, and to me, when you're in, that's when you feel something, when your heart's like pounding a little harder and you leave, even if it's the lineup at the coffee shop, when you have 30 seconds with someone, you go, oh, that was a great connection. And I think a connection, that's what I do. I connect people and I make them feel part of something. And when you do that, I mean, to me, that's breathing, that's life. And I've been addicted to connecting my whole life. I mean, and it's at times a very healthy, addiction. At times it's like, you can't always, be connected.
Well,
So
I think that's the biggest problem we're facing right now is society, is the
Yeah.
division of that, the pulling away of that, of you can't do that. You must pick a side, which is,
well, but to answer to JB though, like my mom led, like I was just going through some old letters she wrote and I was reading them and, she's passed away for a long time, but it was like, I'm reading these letters and like, she was all heart. And right now, like you said, even, Lee, it's like when you go to the coffee shop, you hold back because you're like, oh, you don't want to seem foolish, or what if they don't say hi,
Right.
Well, if you lead with your heart, you can't go wrong.
right.
So that's
Totally.
why I think I've been hired for 28 years before the Jumbotrons and now with the Jumbotrons, is because I lead with my heart. I care about people. And in that moment, I will give you everything I have. And then I'll run for my life because I got to go to the next section.
You know what I love about this, man, is, and this is gonna be a great point. You sound like a professional athlete right now, right? And that's the key that I want people to understand here, especially with you, Cameron, is that to be pro at anything, you have to have what you just talked about, right? You have to be able to be present. Number one, all the greatest athletes are present, all of them, right? And if they're not, they don't survive too long. They get really, really have real problems, right? But I love you said, I'm going to give you everything I have in that moment. I'm going to be present with you in that moment. Then I got to run and do the next thing. Sounds like a professional athlete to me. It sounds like a professional coach to me. And you are a professional. So again, anybody listening, no matter what you want to do, athlete, player, business, doesn't matter. Emulate this man because he's got it. This is what it takes. And I love that you talk about being vulnerable and being present. We talk about that like every episode. All right. The power of the present moment. And here's the thing. You brought up social media. I want to dive into that for a quick second, because this is what I believe. I actually believe the technology that we have is a gift. Social media, Web 3.0, all the stuff that's coming, it's a gift. What I also believe is that as a species, we have not matured enough yet to use it to its potential because we're not present most of the time. Social media is extremely dangerous if you're not present and you have low self-esteem, right? It is a dangerous place. But when we're able to be present, bring down ego, what a tool for connection that could become for us, right? And I do believe it will turn into that at some point in the future. But again, I'm talking a lot here. I want to say it again, though. I love that you're able to bring down the barriers. I love that you're able to be vulnerable. I'm just like you, man. At a coffee shop, I say hi to everybody. I don't care if they say hi. That's who I am. It's me, right? If you're not ready for that, that's okay.
Yeah, that's well, you put yourself out there. I mean, that's the whole
Right.
thing. And I put myself out there at a whole other level. And I was thinking when you said the please and thank you, with your Chick-fil-A thing, I won't give anyone a t-shirt unless they say, can I please have a shirt?
Right.
And
Well, unless you're
and
just
then,
you're throwing them, though. I mean, that's
well, unless I'm throwing them, exactly.
Right.
And if I'm throwing them, and then if a kid catches one, I stand there and I'm like this and like, what? I go, I didn't get a thank you every time.
That's good.
And I got a
Parents
note
love that.
once, true story. I got
Yeah.
a note once from an NHL executive. I'm about to perform at their game 20 minutes before. And he comes down, he says, hey, I just want to let you know. I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, we got a note to the team that you made their kids say thank you for getting a shirt. And I was like, well, I hope you defended me and wrote back, yeah, because that's what you do.
Right. Right.
And he's like, just be mindful of that. I'm like, you're kidding me, right?
So you
So,
teach a good life lesson. And you get
that's my
berated
next
for it.
book. Please and thank you. And other ways to get a free t-shirt at a hockey game.
You get a free t-shirt for reading that book, right? I think that's
Yeah,
part
exactly.
Of the, yeah.
Sweat proof. But
It's because people, they've forgotten these basic human life skills.
Yeah.
And I see it all the time. Like you, Cameron, when you're in town, we go to dinners and things like that. You just see people how they treat the staff, that sort of thing. And
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It goes back to another story. Like when we were trading for a player, I'll always call that equipment manager. Or, that security director, or somebody else on another team. I'm like, hey, tell me about Cameron. How is he?
Yeah.
Oh man, the best guy or the worst guy.
Yeah.
Like it's all, and that follows you. And if you're just not a good dude, if you're not a good person, I'm sorry, your shelf life, your prima donna shelf life,
Right.
eventually goes away.
We've seen it play out. We've seen it play out in football recently. We've seen it play out in hockey,
But if you're a good dude, people will always, have your back. They'll go to bat for you.
Yeah.
They'll give you another chance. And it's all just because of being just a kind human being. And it's not that difficult to do. And go ahead, Cameron.
No, I mean, and for me, it's like you're not wearing a mask when you go out there when I go out in front of 10,000, you see this, and it's like, you feel that, and it's like, you got to be you, what I mean? And so
but you're that way afterwards, Cameron. Cameron, you're that way afterwards. And you're that same way. When people see you in the event, I saw you after event and had a few cocktails with you. And right away you had this entourage of people, and you had some LA group and all these people, and you're like, hey guys, this is JB. He served in the military. Like right away, you were giving me compliments. And I was like, whoa, hang on a second. But that's who you are as a human being. So it's authentic. And Lee and I talk about all the time. You want to be great in what you do, be authentic at what you do, and you're it.
Well, it's that connection. It comes back to that gift of connection and introducing people and bringing people in. And it starts for me at the games. It's like you go to a section and you want everyone to have a great time, and then you want the whole arena to have fun, and you see how it happens and how it spreads. And I'm like, I want everyone to feel that. You know what I mean?
Right.
I've had this thing in me my whole life since I was a young kid going, I want everyone to feel that. I want everyone to have just an amazing time here. And you asked me a great question at the beginning, and maybe I'll finally answer it. It's like, that's what's driven me. I just want everyone to be in that moment and just go, yes, let's celebrate that. And that's what drives me.
That? Like, where do you think that was born? Because here's the deal. Like what amazes me about your story and what you do. And I said this to you before the episode, is that when you look at the greatest at what they do, Kobe Bryant, Tom Brady, there's this like unrelenting passion to do it. They just don't stop. And yes, I'm comparing you with them for a reason, because I think you're at that level with what you do. But what is it? Where does that come from? Like, where do you think that was born? Is it hereditary? Is it something happened to you at a young age that made you do that? Like, I'm so curious about that,
Well, I mean, those are kind words. And I think I take what I do seriously, not myself, for one.
That's a great quote, man. That's a really great quote. It's bigger than you, right?
When I was a kid, my parents lived in a very social, would come from Ottawa. And they used to have Grey Cup parties, like the equivalent of the Super Bowl. And there'd be backyard chili parties and all this. And I was the kid running around, making sure everyone was having a great time, doing whatever I could. I saw it. I felt it. I was like, oh, they need some more chili, or they need another beer, or they need to have a sticker on, whatever it was. Those little things
Right.
that, as we talked about, aren't little, they're big. Right. So
Yeah.
I made people feel a part of it, because my parents and my social circle showed me what that looked like. I
Right.
could see the joy, I could see the smiles, and I could see the people, like, their personalities come out, because we all know when we go to a game and we let loose, our personalities come out and we feel better. We share, like, our heart, right?
Yeah. Especially
we
after a
cheer.
$10 beer. Yeah.
Yeah. But we do, like I've had the shyest person in the world get up at a crowd that if they went to the game, they'd be like, there's no way I'm getting up. And I
Right.
somehow break that barrier, because I'm like, watch what will happen when you get up. And I get them up and I start to twirl the shirt with them, and the joy and the smile and the crowd responding to them. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that, right?
I can't imagine it getting, especially when it fills your heart the way it does. And again, whatever the audience, whatever you do that fills your heart, I think that's what, we're alluding to here is you got to believe in your vision and your mission and your belief. I love what you call it, a belief meter, a belief,
Yeah.
sensor. I love that. Right. Like maybe everybody listening to this, maybe ask yourself, where's your meter at? Is your belief meter full?
point.
Like, are you
Yeah.
ready to go, or is it low? And if it's low, what do we need to do to help you get that up? Right. You got to really believe in, obviously, what you're believing.
Well,
Go ahead, Kim. Yeah.
especially in the last 2 years, I was called the most unemployable person in North America.
That's
And
fair.
it's like,
It's super fair.
I think it's a good point to check in with your belief meter, because of the highs and lows of the world now, but also, like,
Right.
especially if you're going out and trying something different, or, to be an athlete or artist, or something that's a little more challenging and a little out there, you really got to check in with your belief meter, and you got to get some wins, and you got to, for me, my big thing, and it's a big part of the book, is celebrate your victories along the way. And
Right.
I'm sure you guys, like, are big fans of that, in the sense of, like, you go to a cool meeting. It doesn't mean you go buy a brand new Porsche, but it means you had the meeting, and you
Right.
should be aware of it, and grateful for, like, someone else took time to listen to your vision, or whatever, what might have been. Right.
Right.
And I had to live that in LA, because like the amount of rejection I faced was insane, but I was always left the room going, oh, I was there,
Right. That's a great way of looking at it, because I know so many people that they say, oh, I'll never win. I never get what I'm due. And it's like, that's not the way to look at it. You're not owed anything.
No,
You're not owed anything. You're owed the opportunity to try. That's what I'm going to say. It makes where we live so awesome. You have there's places you don't even have that. So anyway, not going to go that direction.
And you know what Cameron kept doing though, Lee, Cameron, you kept showing up.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
Relentless.
keep showing up. Keep showing up. United States Military Academy at West Point, they have like a standby line. You have to be fully qualified, everything else. And of course, these kids are like showing up. And I remember it was like the third year in the row. And this kid like had to make it in, or, you age out in areas like third year in the row. This kid's like standing in line in the show up line, like trying to make it in, and eventually did. Like, keep showing up.
Right.
And that's that is, I love it. It's so brave, and it just shows courage. And you know what, you take your thumps, but you keep moving forward. Love it.
I love it too. Yeah.
And I don't think one of the things that I've learned on that too is, like, I've got, a couple hundred jerseys. If I grabbed one jersey, the story of getting to that jersey would be, well, I showed up in this town and then I met, Donna here, who runs the team, and then Jack here, and then this happened, and then they called, and you're like, it doesn't happen overnight. Right. But if you believe, if you keep believing, you keep working that network, you keep working those relationships, you're going to get the call, you're going to get the shot, you're going to get in the stadium, whatever that stadium is for you,
I love that. I also love that, again, for those of you listening to this episode, if you're watching, you can see the jerseys behind him. He's surrounded by them. And look, let's be honest. Some people surround themselves with trophies. Some people surround themselves, in this case, jerseys. You talked about celebrating your wins. In my office at home, I'm surrounded by pictures of my family and team pictures, not even so much championship pictures, which I've been blessed with many of those, but it's the picture of the team in a moment together. Those are my trophies, right? It's okay to celebrate your wins and even your losses, and sometimes if you learn from them. Like you said, every one of those jerseys has a story. I love that. I'm going to turn it to the final question now, at least for me. So, we talk about adversity. You alluded to this a few minutes ago. There's never a journey where you make it and that's it, and it's just upward trajectory all the time. It doesn't exist. It's up and down. And I think the real kind of key to success is just to kind of understand how to flow on the water, up and down. So you're going to have ups and downs your whole life. So I want to know about how you deal with adversity. And you've said it the whole episode. You've dealt with that from a young age with your mother all the way through trying to break into the business that you're in. How do you deal with it? What's your advice for the audience on how to deal with it? And how important is mental fitness overall in regards to what we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, that's chapter 7 through 9, I think.
There you go. Go buy his book.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I mean, a couple things real quick. My friend of mine, when I was living in LA and I was trying to do the Hollywood thing, it's a really powerful thing. He wrote me an email out of the blue. He knew I was struggling because I was just trying to do stuff and trying to, make it all work. And he wrote me an email and he just said, stop trying to do everything. What are you the best at? Yeah. What do you love doing? What are you great at? Because then he listed all the things and he goes, stop trying to please everyone, focus on that. And it changed my life. I was like, stopped auditioning for shows. And I went out, I'm like, I'm the best at cheering at events, getting in front of crowds.
Wow.
And it just changed the trajectory of my life because I was so like trying to do everything, trying to be here, trying to be there. And so mentally, like now what I do is like, I realize that you've got to have your wins. You got to have your kind of like mini dreams. You got to have your big dreams, And for me, it's balancing those while also balancing, the highs and lows of being on the road. And, that's really challenging too, coming off like 2 weeks of being here with, 20,000 fans for 2 weeks. And you come down and you're like, okay, where am I at? But it always starts, and I'll end with this. It starts with here. I've always just believed that, that's why I got up the first night. I didn't know if it was going to work, but I believed in that it was the right moment, the right time, and the right seats and the right score in the game. And when I go to the US Open or a minor league hockey game in Red Deer, Alberta, I want to bring the same thing to those fans, that feeling that let's have a little more fun. And that's always driven me. And so that gets me through those challenging times. It's that thing in the back of my head that I'm going to provide value. We're going to have a little more fun tonight. Watch.
I love it. I love too, just real quick, Jay, before I throw it to you, the name of our parent company is Pivotal Moments, right? Pivotal Moments Media. I love that you told us the story of how you reached your pivotal moment and that from that pivotal moment, the journey doesn't stop there, right? And there's multiple pivotal moments, to be fair, right? But you had to get there. It was a process to get there for the listening audience. It doesn't just happen. Things happen to get you there, and then it happens. And then when it does happen, it's not over. Right? That could have been it. You could have done that one night in Ottawa. That's it, Sally. The show is over. I did it. No, you turn it into a career. You got a book out. People know who you are. You're making so many people happy, and then they leave making other people happy. That's unbelievable. Some quantum leap level stuff. All right, for those of you that were from the 80s. Anyway, JB, there's one more question left on our rundown here that I know you want to ask.
Well, I just want to say, Cameron, 2024 Super Bowl in Vegas. Let's see you there.
Let's do it. That'll be my last game ever. That's on my list.
Is that your retirement?
Dude, you're gonna cart me out of there.
I love it.
No, Cameron, you've been a phenomenal guest, and I was looking forward to this episode because of what you bring, and I knew there'd be some valuable information to bring to our audience. Because, go ahead, man. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say, I appreciate always being able to share my story and hear other people's takes on it. And I always leave with this: the cheer you give is the cheer you get. Right?
I love it. I love it. You get what you put out, man. That's great stuff. Well, look, I'm going to close it on that because that's a great quote. Real quick, actually, Cameron, where people can get your book, where's the best place to go get it for you?
You can go to my website, CameronHughes.tv, and you can order it from me directly and I personalize it, or you could go on any of the big retailers and, buy it that way.
Because I'm an author too, go to his website to get it.
Exactly.
There's reasons for that. All right. Not the Amazon's easy, but go over to his website, help this man out.
An audiobook coming soon.
That's awesome, man. So that's right. Audiobook coming soon. Listen, that's going to do it for this episode of Win Championship Trades for Life, which is powered again by Pivotal Moments Media. You can learn more about our organization, Pivotal Moments, and Grit. Check it out, pivotalmomentsmedia.com. We have a lot of inspirational content, entertaining content, and educational content along with every episode of Win you've ever done. But for Cameron Hughes and JB Spizzo, I'm Lee Elias. Thanks so much for joining us. Keep an eye out for more episodes soon. And thanks for listening. We'll see you next time on Win.